out what our schedule for next week is going to be.
Do your weekly chapters, all of that stuff.
Are all juniors required to go to rehearsal?
You will probably be able to start out, yes, unless I notify you differently. Yes.
Wonderful, all right, here we are, final senior presentation of 2021-2022. I have the pleasure of introducing Aidyn. Aidyn really needs no introduction to this audience, I'm very sure of that. He's been performing and presenting in a very visual and oral part of the VNS community for the last 6 years. He's here today to share his senior project, but also the growth he's had over those 6 years. There are a lot of lessons here for all of you, as well as Aidyn. So we welcome Aidyn to the stage.
Caught me off guard. I was not. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out this morning. I'm sure anyone who has met me, seen me simply walking around, or seen me for the first time without even seeing my senior project title, would know that I am a musician. My parents will testify that I have been a musician since before I was able to talk. I could be found singing loudly in my family's row at church, or starting in kindergarten, performing with Kids Stage, doing 3 to 4 shows a year with them through 6th grade. I was introduced early to the idea of performing in front of people, and I absolutely loved it. And this was merely the beginning. I forgot to turn my mic on. During the second half of elementary school at Appleton Public Montessori, my performing continued. In addition to Kids Stage, I now got to participate in performing arts classes at APM from one of the best music teachers in the area, Leela Purtle. I started to learn percussion and a deeper love for music that I had not ever previously experienced. I was also introduced to the philosophy that anyone is capable of performing music, and that music is a birthright. And then I came to VNS. Here my opportunities to perform skyrocketed. Over the last 6 years, I was able to do several projects, making music videos, participating in our annual open mics, serving on the Milo Music Education team, and expanding my performing to local community theater productions with St. Mary Central, UW Fox Valley, St. Tim's Church, Kaukauna Community Players, Attic Theater, Oshkosh Community Players, and Xavier High School. I continued to perform in multiple theater productions every year. To sum up, I've considered myself a musician and a performer for a long time. So, why? Why, with all this experience, all this background, would I choose to study vocal performance for my senior capstone project? Because in order to be great at anything, you have to work for it. To put it another way, Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't born with a bodybuilder's body. He worked very hard at it. This quote applies to anything, but today we're going to look at it from a musician's standpoint. See, everyone has the potential to be a musician, but in order to enhance these skills and move beyond what you're born with, the musician must commit to deeper study. Understanding psychological, expressive, and physical aspects of performance allows the musician to fully shape themselves as an artist. I realized when deciding what topic to research that this project was what I needed to enhance my skills as a performer. And the satisfying part is, it worked. I am a better and more skilled musician now than when I started this project. So that's it, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'll now be taking questions. No, I'm just kidding. You might be wondering, how? How did you do that? Well, I'm glad you want to know, because that's exactly what I'm going to tell you with the rest of my time here this morning. To grow my knowledge and skill sets, I plan to research 3 main subtopics: music theory, vocal technique, and psychology of performance. I would like to begin with you today by talking to you about music theory. And you might be wondering what that is. Britannica defines music theory as the study of the concepts and compositional methods involved in the creation of music. It's how we understand and use the language of music, how we listen to it, how we create sound, how it's read, and how it's written. Every single piece of music, every song, every soundtrack, every piece of music you listen to depends on music theory. To put it another way, the aspects of music theory is like a recipe for music. The basic elements, tempo, rhythm, pitch, timbre, dynamics, melody, and harmony are like the ingredients for a dish. And once you have these ingredients, you can begin to craft the recipe by combining the elements in different ways. And just like with cooking, there are some rules about how a composer or performer should use these musical ingredients. But there's also plenty of room for creativity. U Theory, a very helpful online course recommended to me by VNS alum and music teacher Becky Johnson, divides the study of the elements of music theory into these categories: rhythm, pitch and harmony, and ear training. It provides a great foundation as well as an understanding of more complex things, like obscure time signatures, syncopations, different clefs, accidentals, minor keys, triads, sevenths, Roman numerals, the circle of fifths, intervals, and other terrifyingly complicated things to make something that might look like this. But we're not ready for that yet. Let's go through some of the basics first. Rhythm is the arrangement of sounds of music and how long you spend on those sounds. We read and write rhythm on paper with notes. This is a quarter note. We typically count a quarter note as one beat. It sounds like this. Very straightforward, very simple. Two quarter notes together take up 2 beats. And so does this half note. But instead of making 2 separate sounds, though, we hear one longer sound that is held for 2 beats. 2 half notes together, which would sound like, takes up 4 beats, just like this whole note. However, the whole note is one complete sound held for 4 beats. Now, you might notice with these notes that they all take up at least 1 beat. But if we go in the opposite direction, making fractions of beats, we can fit more notes into the same amount of time. Half of 1 beat, or 1 quarter note, can be written as an eighth note by adding a flag, which is this little part right here. If 1 quarter note sounds like this, then 2 eighth notes could sound like this. You can continue to divide notes into more subdivisions, like 16th notes, and even 32nd notes, 64th notes, and so on, however long you decide to keep doing the math. We tend to think of music as sounds, but it actually includes planned silences too. That's when a composer writes in a rest. And the same thing that applied to notes can also be applied to rests. For example, here is what a quarter rest, or 1 beat of silence, looks like. I might demonstrate the space it takes like this. 2 quarter rests can be combined to make a half rest. 2 half rests can be combined to make a whole rest. And then the subdivisions of 8th rests, 16th rests, and so on and so on. You can then take these notes and apply them to a meter. A meter is a grouping of 1 or more beats to form a pattern. Some of the most common types of meters in music are duple meters, which have 2 beats per measure. These are commonly found in marches like this. One, two, 1, 2. One, two, 1, 2. Triple meters, which commonly have 3 beats per measure. These are commonly found in waltzes like this. One, two, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And the most common type of meter, quadruple meters, which commonly have 4 beats per measure, like this. One, two, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. To show these groupings in a clear way, composers write notes and rests on the 5 lines of a musical staff and separate them with bar lines like you'll see here and here. The space in between the bar lines we call a measure. And each measure has the same amount of beats. The group of notes and rests in a measure might look and sound different, but the rhythm still adds up to, in this case, 4 beats per measure. To determine what type of meter we are in, we use a time signature. The top number of a time signature will tell you what type of meter it is, which, as I stated, is how many beats are in a measure. And the bottom number tells you what type of note represents a beat. With a 4 on the bottom of this time signature, a beat will be represented by a quarter note. We can now fill this bar or measure with a sum of 4 beats in any combination. When we reach the number of required beats in the measure, we put a bar line at the end of it. We can now clap this rhythm in a steady meter. That doesn't sound like a song anybody would listen to, does it? There are still a few elements missing. So let's apply pitch to this pattern. Currently, with where the notes are on the staff, these measures would sound like this. That still doesn't sound like a song anybody would listen to. However, if we move around some of the notes, like this, we've added melody. Now let's see what this sounds like. That sounds better. But how did I know which notes to play? Well, each line or space between the lines on the staff represents a particular pitch. The farther toward the top you go, the higher the pitch gets, and as you move toward the bottom line, the pitch gets lower. Let's take a look at a piano. A piano is divided into white and black keys. We have an alternating pattern of 2 black keys and then 3 black keys. Each white or black key sounds a specific pitch when pressed, and each pitch is assigned a letter name. To start naming notes, we'll begin with the key left of the 2 black keys. We'll name this note C. We can then go up the white keys with alphabet letters until we hit G. So C, D, E, F, G. And then we start the alphabet over with A, B, and as you guessed it, C. And then the 8-note cycle repeats, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and so on and so on. The letter names of the piano keys correspond with the letters of the notes written on the musical staff. We have seen what notes on a staff look like, and since a single staff is only 5 lines and 4 spaces, it can only accommodate a certain range of pitches. We signal which pitch range is covered on the particular staff by adding a clef. This is a clef. This is also a clef. The pitch of each line and space shown depends on what clef is shown at the beginning of each line. For now, let's use the treble clef, or the G clef. You can see that this clef somewhat resembles the letter G and wraps around the line where G is on the staff. Once we have determined where G is, we can then go down the staff, G, F, E, D, C, and then back up the staff from G, A, B, C. And then we can also repeat this, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and so on. And you'll see here how it aligns with the keys on a piano. However, a real piano will have a lot more keys, will have a lot more notes on it, and so we need multiple clefs to represent different ranges of pitch, such as the bass clef. Different voice. But what about the black keys on the piano? These are the notes we call accidentals, the half steps between white keys. If the black key is a half step above a white key, we refer to it as a sharp, and if it's a piano key lower, we refer to it as a flat. So this note between the white keys D and E could be referred to as D sharp or E flat. Depending on the particular relationship between notes that the composer wants or has to show based on more complex rules of music theory that I will not be covering today. And this note between the white keys A and B could be referred to as A sharp or B flat, and so on with all the notes. And the further you go into music theory, the more complex you can get with accidentals, even going as far as double accidentals, which applies to moving up or down two piano keys. We can apply any accidentals to the staff by writing the note in its place and adding the corresponding accidental before the note, like I've done here, changing the note B into B flat. So, let's see how well everybody's been paying attention. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some notes on the piano and on the staff, and we'll see if you can name them. Please raise your hand, and I will call on you.
C.
Correct, that is C. Okay.
G.
G, correct. Okay. Aidyn?
F.
Correct. Eliza?
Is that a B?
Correct, it is a B. Trin?
D.
It is D. Isaac?
F.
That is not F. Hazel?
E.
E is correct. Karina?
C.
C is correct. Sage?
A.
Nope.
Wait.
Wait, no, this is A. Sorry, my bad. I lost most of my head. A is correct. Meredith?
E flat.
E flat is correct. Annika?
A flat.
A flat is correct. Veronica?
F sharp.
F sharp is correct. Owen?
C sharp.
C sharp is correct. Yes?
C.
That is not C. Coulter?
B sharp.
B sharp is correct. Annika?
D flat flat.
Technically correct, but there's another term I introduced that I'm looking for.
Is it just a C?
No, not the note name I'm looking for. Aidyn.
D double flat.
The Berklee Correspondence Course, Music, Harmony, and Arranging. I didn't go through this entire book, as there were several lessons toward the end that didn't apply to what I had learned, and as I progressed through the book, lessons were getting complex and taking me too long, and it got to a point where it started to require advanced composing and arranging. Those are skills composers need, and something I did not have the time to spend mastering, and so I needed to move on. I will say that learning music theory was not without its frustrations. As I have alluded to, music theory gets complex very quickly, and those who sat near me during my learning music theory process will know that I did not shy away from letting out my frustrations in grunts, complaints, and screaming into pillows. Frustrations including tricky rhythm exercises, sneaky key signature changes, and the hours upon hours upon hours of writing out sheet music. What fun. But all the things I learned by studying music theory helped me increase my knowledge as a musician. Another way I increased my knowledge and skill as a musician was through my next subtopic, vocal technique, otherwise known as the practices that improve the physical aspects of singing. The primary way I developed my vocal technique in this project was with vocal lessons. But why would a singer need to do this? Taking vocal lessons can make you a better singer by increasing your range, teaching proper breathing, tone and sound placement, improving diction, and teaching vocal health. Now, I've been singing for a long time, and for the longest time, I didn't think I needed vocal lessons. However, years of straining and improper technique, and looking back at old recordings, convinced me otherwise. Let's take a look at an example.
Oh boy.
Some of you might not know what he was doing wrong, so let me give you the play-by-play of things he did not yet know he was doing wrong. Number 1, his shoulders. Every time he went to go and try and hit a high note, his shoulders would go up like this. That doesn't help him. Your vocal cords don't stretch when your shoulders do. Number 2, his eyebrows. Lifting your eyebrows can allow for better forward placement of sound and lift up your soft palate. By scrunching his eyebrows like this whenever he tries to hit a high note, he's adding unnecessary strain to his voice. Number 3, the diaphragm. Notice the way he's standing. He's standing very tense with his stomach sucked in like this. That is not good. He should be expanding his diaphragm out and his ribcage out in order to better support his breath and his sound. By standing like this, he's adding unnecessary tension and strain to his voice. And number 4, the neck. There's way too much tension in that neck. By having a lot of tension and moving the neck forward like this like a bird or up like this like a giraffe, he's adding unnecessary strain to his voice. But why is this strain a bad thing for him? This is a diagram showing your vocal cords. They are some of the tiniest and most fragile muscles in your body. When you create sound with your voice, the sound is made by your vocal cords colliding together into each other as air passes through. Muscle tension, incorrect posture and placement, and consistent abuse, such as loud yelling, unhealthy pushing, singing, and lack of rest, can cause strain on these cords. Consistent strain can eventually lead to permanent damage to the cords. Permanent damage can lead to a scratchy voice at best, or no singing voice at worst. So as you can see, little Aidyn needed to take action, and so he didn't. Until in 2020 of all years, as I realized I wanted to be able to hit notes I couldn't hit in musical theater songs. And upon recommendation from several people, I started taking vocal lessons. I started via Zoom with a local studio and made some progress on proper technique and increasing my range. However, in the beginning of 2021-2022 school year, the studio stopped doing lessons, and so I had to find a new vocal teacher. Luckily, I had been getting suggestions on vocal teachers for years. The name I kept hearing was Carol Jagan, and so I scheduled weekly lessons with her for a majority of the school year. Almost every Tuesday, I walked approximately 30 minutes from VNS to her house, had a vocal lesson, and walked back to school, except in the freezing cold of winter when I was fortunate enough to get a ride from Miss K. Carol and I worked all year on technique and learning songs to perform on my end-of-year recital, which was one of my main products for this project. More on that in a minute. With Carol, I learned most of the techniques that you heard me critiquing earlier. With Carol's feedback, I learned that I was consistently moving my neck around in not great ways and not expanding my ribcage and diaphragm. These bad habits were causing unnecessary tension around my vocal cords and limiting the amount of breath supporting my sound. In other words, I was pushing the sound out instead of physically supporting it. I want to try something together. Everybody stand up. I want you to just take a breath in, as you normally would, and I want you to let out a slow hiss for as long as you can until you run out of breath, like this. And just feel free to stop whenever you feel yourself running out of breath. They breathed properly. They know what I'm going to do. Now, this time, I want you to relax your shoulders. Put your hands on your diaphragm like this. And breathe in through your nose. When you breathe in this time, you should feel your diaphragm and ribcage expanding like this. And then I want you to let the slow hiss out again. So let's all breathe in together. I could have gone on longer, but I wanted to get it in water. Now, I imagine that this time was longer than the last. Am I correct in that assumption? That is how singers want to breathe. You may all have a seat. This allows for better sound quality and longer notes to be sung. The best tone comes when you combine good breathing with proper placement. Look at this photo on the right. You'll notice several physical things happening to my face that weren't happening in the clip from earlier. I'm utilizing several muscles in my eyebrows, my cheeks, and in my tongue, relaxing my jaw in order to create good placement, which means that instead of pushing the sound out from my throat, it's resonating up here instead. And because of the space in here, you get an overall better sound quality. Along with weekly practice and lessons with Carol, I would spend time during the days in between lessons to work on the song on my own and work on any assignments relating to technique that she had given me to complete before our next lesson. As I mentioned earlier, along with weekly lessons, Carol also helped me craft my senior recital. The songs we chose for the recital were a mixed selection of pieces that I had learned this year during lessons, songs I just enjoy singing, and songs I had recently performed in theater productions. Once the song list was set, there were a couple more things I needed to plan. First, to find a collaboration partner. I wanted to add another performer to the recital in order to make the program longer and add some variety to the program, letting them perform their own song and a duet with me as well. When I was thinking of duets I wanted to possibly put in the program, some songs from Phantom of the Opera were big contenders, and so I had to find somebody who could really sing it. Luckily, while participating in All Together Now with Xavier Theater, I met a fellow senior whose voice fit the bill, Isabella Sardin. She thankfully agreed and was excited to participate. Next, I needed to find a space to hold the recital. Now, VNS was always an option, but I wanted to at least reach out to other possible places to make it feel like a more separate event. While I was looking for places, Mr. Jim Romanesco, the director at Xavier High School, found out what I was doing and offered to have it at Xavier. I quickly jumped at this opportunity because I knew Xavier had really visually and acoustically beautiful spaces, and I needed more excuses to possibly see some of my friends over there. The next tricky thing was the day. With so many different people and schedules involved, finding a day was rather tricky. I had to find a time that worked best with my busy schedule, my family's, Carol's, Isabella's, and availability of Xavier spaces. After weeks and weeks of emails and text messages and confirmations with everybody, we finally decided on a day and time. I was shocked by the attendance. More people showed up than I had expected. Thank you to all of you who came in person or watched any parts of the recital online. The entire recital is still available for viewing on the Valley New School YouTube channel. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. I would just like to show one of the songs from the recital today, though. If Ever I Would Leave You from Camelot was one of the songs I learned with Carol throughout the entire year, and the final song I performed in the recital. Video should be there. putting together a performance allowed me to apply research about psychology of performance, my final subtopic for this project. You need this. Well, to be honest, even I still get nervous before getting in front of an audience, including today. I knew this subtopic would help expand my knowledge of tactics I could use to help myself or even other performers. Also, performance psychology deals with more than just stage fright. I had a couple of main sources for this research. The first was a masterclass from Usher on the art of performance. I got a lot of notes from this source on defining yourself as an artist and tricks for practicing and performing. For example, he gave great advice, which I applied to my recital, about one of the best ways to design practice sessions leading up to a performance, and being in the right headspace when you go out on stage, as a music performance. One of my biggest takeaways from these sources was about growth, a central theme throughout this entire project. You have to believe you'll get better in time. You have to work at it, and you're not going to succeed right away, and that's okay. Failing is all part of the process of growing as a musician. I will continue to grow at Emmaus Bible College this fall, studying ministry leadership with a minor in music ministry. I would like to thank everyone who helped me out throughout the course of this project. My live sources, Leela Pirtle, Carol Jagan, and Becky Johnson. Mr. Romanesco and Isabella Serdan for collaborating with me on the recital. Miss Kay for being an amazing advisor to me over these past 6 years and for giving me rides to vocal lessons or wherever else I needed to go. My amazing mom and dad and my grandparents for their never-ending support. Lydia and Karina for being amazing senior support and accountability partners. And the general population. Eliza.
If you had one piece of advice for future seniors, what would that piece of advice be?
The question was advice for future seniors. I would say have a good idea of what you, this was said earlier by one of the other seniors, but have a good idea of what you want your senior project to be before your senior year. One of the biggest disadvantages I had with this project was I'm indecisive and I didn't come into the school year with a set plan, and so it took me a while to determine what this project was going to be, and that put me a bit more behind than I would have liked to be. So have an idea going in. Jack.
If you could describe this senior project with a song title, what song would that be?
The question was, if I could describe the senior project with a song title, what would that song title be? For those of you who may not know, this is a reference to a Monday morning meeting question I would consistently ask about if you could describe your life with a song title, what would it be? I was
Under
not.
pressure.
Under pressure. That's a good one. Time after time. Yeah, Under Pressure was a really good one. I'm blanking on like every song. Whenever I'm asked that question, I always blank on every song I know. Miss Lukey.
How have you evolved as a project-based learner?
The question was how I've evolved as a project-based learner. I would say one of the main ways I've evolved as a project-based learner was the realization that the projects I do better are the projects I'm passionate about. So like some of my most successful projects here at VNS that I've done have been either the topics that like, that's a really cool topic, I really, really, really want to learn that, or a project that had I had a really cool idea for a product at the end of it, and then I was like, oh, now how do I craft an entire project around that? So yeah, I would say the journey and realization of that. And that was very helpful for especially deciding this project as well, was like, no, if I'm going to do a big project, it's going to be something that I can keep passionate about and that I can keep looking forward to the end of it with really cool ideas. Annika.
What's your favorite musical theater piece to like listen to or experience, and then your favorite to perform? Sorry.
The question was, what was your favorite musical theater piece to listen to and experience, And what is one of your favorite ones to perform? I have to say, in terms of, I don't think I can determine one that I like listening to because it depends on the day. Oftentimes I find myself listening to ones that have overlapping harmonies with different parts, such as One Day More from Les Mis or Who I'd Be from Shrek the Musical. Those are some of my favorites because it's the goosebump moments of like, yes, it's all these different parts and they're all working together at the same time. That's so cool. And one of my favorite theater songs to perform, I really loved performing Dentist from Little Shop of Horrors this year. That one was just, it was just a fun character song, and it was an archetype of a character I never got to play, which was the villain. So that one was a lot of fun, and so that's one of the reasons why I included that as one of the pieces in my recital. Caitlin.
What's one of the most difficult pieces of music theory that you learned this year? And could you give like the most brief explanation of it that you could?
The question was, what is one of the most complicated pieces of music theory that I learned this year? Trying to think of how to define it without going over a lot of people's heads. Once you have the notes on the piano, you start to play multiple notes at the same time, making chords. And those can be major, minor, and then it starts getting into complicated things with adding more notes to those, and then it starts going into like, oh, you start having like the fifth note in a scale, like adding to it, or like stuff like that. And that's where it can get really, really complex very, very quickly. And also with that, the key signatures, which when you have a series of notes that has an accidental in it, you need to put that at the beginning of the piece of music. And so knowing all of those is also a pain. Trin.
You've been at VNS for 6 years now. That's quite a long time. How do you think that you have changed at VNS? And how has VNS kind of changed around you?
The question was, since I've been at VNS for 6 years, what are some of the ways I've changed while at my time here at VNS and ways VNS have changed around me, correct?
Yeah.
I'll say I hope I demonstrated a very big way that I've changed in VNS in this presentation. That clip that I was critiquing earlier was from one of my first music projects in 7th grade. And so I had to throw that one in as a cool before and after, kind of. Obviously, like, my vocal ability has increased throughout my time here at VNS. I've learned like how to be more reflective and other stuff too, like other parts of the project process I've grown in as well. Ways VNS has changed. For one, barely anybody is still here from when I started here at VNS. People have graduated. And I would say one of the ways too is that I feel like the community has just grown stronger, and I feel like COVID kind of helped that. We all had that shared experience that we came back here and we're like, we're in a stronger community now because we've all been like that. There's not as much of a hierarchy anymore of like seniors being like, oh, I don't want to hang out with middle schoolers or freshmen. Like it's not as much of that anymore. Sage.
You have a beautiful vibrato, first off, that's beautiful. And second off, how has just, through this project, how has like the biggest beast to conquer for you, how has that been like prevailed, or how have you like moved past that if you had a beast to conquer?
The question was, throughout this project, how did I conquer the big beast to conquer?
Yeah.
One of the things I have always struggled with is reflection. And especially throughout crafting this presentation and toward the end of the project, looking at it as a whole, I found myself like looking back and being like, oh, wow, I have come a long way. Like the parts of like being able to do what I did here and look at that old video I made and of me singing and being like, wow, he's doing everything wrong. He has no idea. And also in watching all the clips from the recital too, it was a bit of the moment of reflection of being like, that's me? Like, that's my singing voice? That's where I'm at? That's where I've come to? So yeah, Aidyn.
If you could go back and give yourself any advice or encouragement, what would it be?
The question was, if I could go back and give myself any advice or encouragement, what would it be? Take vocal lessons sooner. Take vocal lessons sooner. That it might seem scary, it might seem like a lot, but do it. Because that helped me a ton, and that would have been very helpful for so many years. Eliza.
Do you still have your cover of Stitches by Shawn Mendes?
No, I don't. That has been lost in computer files. I have burned it. I have burned it. It has been lost in computer files. That one never even made it to the video process. Oh, the question was if I still have my cover of Stitches by Shawn Mendes. That was one of the covers that I was going to do for a music video project and never did, but I recorded it, and it was bad. Karina.
In the same vein as Aidyn's question, advice for aspiring musicians.
Don't be afraid to fail. That can go for anything, but especially in careers with the arts or doing hobbies with the arts, you're going to be greeted with more no's than you are yeses. Be afraid to fail. Don't 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 be afraid to fail, because ultimately failing is going to be how you grow as a musician. Lydia.
So, you used a lot of sources for this project. What was your favorite source that you used?
I liked using a lot of my sources because I had a variety of different sources. The masterclass was fun just because it was something different, and that was cool to be able to have that source for this project. I enjoyed music theory at times, even though it was frustrating most of the time. Just because it kind of reminded me a bit of like Duolingo, but for music, which was really, really cool. And obviously one of the ones I really enjoyed was my live sources. I knew several of them before this project. I always love every opportunity I get to talk to Leela Purtle. And then vocal lessons with Carol was just really, really cool and a lot of fun to have that consistency every week. Lulu.
Can you give a live performance of you singing Stitches by Shawn Mendes?
The question was if I can do a live performance of
pay
Stitches
you.
by Shawn Mendes. Not today. That was not a part of my research. Jack.
So are you, John, Elliot, and Trin ever gonna make another rockin' music video?
The question was, are John, Elliot, and Trin and myself ever going to make another music video? I don't know. That was not a part of my research. Caitlin.
Is Be Afraid to Fail going to be your senior quote? And
No, it is not.
Side note, it should be.
It is. The yearbook has already been turned in, and I have a much cooler quote that has a plasma. No.
Just run over it.
Because that was a misspeak on my part. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. Add the word don't. Sage.
So you know the Canes through Kid Stage, I'm assuming?
Yes, I do know the Canes.
I used to be in Kid Stage too.
Oh, fun.
Anywho, what was your favorite like production of Kid Stage that like you did or have?
The question was, what was my favorite production of Kid Stage that I ever did? Hold on 1 second. I have to remind myself what they all were. Yes, and I have it pulled up here. I was ready for this question. I just wasn't prepared to answer it. I would probably say the later ones were some of the more fun. One of my favorite ones I did was Into the Woods with Kid Stage All-Stars, where it was like the best of the best from all over the place, and we came together and we put a show together in 2 weeks, and it was insane. And yeah, that one was a lot of fun. And I had a fun part in it, so. Trin.
If 7th grade you could see you now, see where you are and see what you're doing, how do you think you feel about it?
Ooh. The question was, if 7th grade Aidyn could see where I'm at now and see what I'm doing, what would he think about it? I think he would look at the crazy things I've done this year, the crazy opportunities I've had, and all the crazy stuff I've done, and be like, there's no way that that's real. Like, he'd be like, you're telling me we got to perform on the PAC this year? Like, he'd look at that and be like, what? That is insanity. Yeah, he'd probably just be shocked and be like, there is no way that happened. Aidyn.
How much time did you put into this project?
How much time did I put into this project? I can't remember off the top of my head, but I will look and I will find you later. Yes.
So first of all, excellent job. I'd like to hire you for a music educator in the district. Your college just come right to it. I was wondering what your compass for your senior recital, and if you could talk a little bit about that collaboration between your compass and
Yes, it was my vocal teacher, Carol Jenkins. And so it was a huge advantage of being able to work in vocal lessons with her the entire year. The question was, who was my accompanist for the recital? So yeah, it was nice to have that collaboration, learning with her the whole year, and then to be able to essentially run through the recital at a vocal lesson because she was playing all the accompaniment anyway. And so I knew whether she was my accompanist or not, that I would have wanted her there, and so it worked really well that she was able to accompany.
And that's a really, critical role, right?
Yes, very much so.
You have to depend on her, and yeah, it's excellent performance.
Thank you. Isaac.
If you couldn't play the piano, what would be your second instrument?
If I couldn't play the piano, what would be my second instrument? First off, I can barely play the piano. I play the piano in a really weird way where like I go off of chords and stuff. I haven't typically in the past been following sheet music because in the past I didn't know how to read it as well. That might change in the future. I might branch out and maybe try and do stuff with that. Second instrument would be the drum kit, which I have also been playing for a long time since elementary school, and I do continue to play consistently. Aidyn.
Speaking of which, how do you plan to evolve your music?
How do I plan to evolve my music? Obviously in college next year, continuing to learn music ministry, and that will add more, a different type of music study in there, I hope. And also like Emmaus does offer vocal lessons there, so I will continue to work on technique and train my voice and continue to do stuff like that. And obviously I'll continue to perform out in the community wherever I end up. Community theaters are everywhere, so I will continue to perform like that as well. Caitlin.
If you could be instantly good at one instrument,
Guitar.
Guitar, yeah.
If I could be instantly good at one instrument, it would be guitar.
Electric or acoustic?
Acoustic, because I cannot play guitar to save my life. My fingers don't work like that. I can't process the frets. It's yet. Thank you. So yeah, it would be guitar. Miss Blum.
What was your note-taking process through this project?
Well, the question was, what was my note-taking process throughout this project? It varied for my different subtopics. For vocal technique, I kept a notebook and page of assignments, or like wrote the notes in the sheet music itself, so I would always see like, hey, remember to have this vowel here instead, don't go like some of the stuff like that in the sheet music itself. For music theory, I had an entire notebook filled with notes from all the lessons that U Theory provided, and I like did like bullet points in the notebook for each lesson. And for psychology of performance, I did the standard note card. and I always like doing the note card way because I'm very much a visual learner, and so I can always then spread them out when I'm beginning to craft something and be like, okay, we're going to put like this, and then like moving everything around and be like, we're going to put like this and this, like that. Ms. Lukey.
Well, it's about 11:23, but I was wondering why you decided not to play us a live performance, and maybe would you consider playing us a live performance?
The question was why I didn't decide to do a live performance, and if I could consider doing a live performance right now. I will not right now, just because I've been talking for a very long time. And as you mentioned, it's 11:23. My accompanist is not here. I do not have the sheet music up here. That would take time. And as for why I did not decide to do one today, there was a point in the process where we were possibly considering that. When we were planning for the recital and looking at dates and times, there was an alternative that we had where it was if we couldn't get, like for some reason, if like there was no after school time that worked or no alternative time that had worked, we would have just worked it into the senior presentation this morning. So that was an option, but then when we did the recital, it was a thing of, oh, I'm going to be presenting very early in the morning, not have a ton of time to warm up, and I'm proud of that clip from the recital. I'll just show one in the slideshow. We're gonna rapid fire here. Trin.
BNS the musical, how long is it gonna take to make, and who's gonna be the celebrity cast?
BNS the musical, how long is it gonna take to make? Not a part of my research.
Great, techniques for building confidence and performance.
Techniques for building confidence and performance. As I said earlier, don't be afraid to fail, because that is, when you have that mindset, that is one of the biggest ways to have confidence. Because what most people are afraid of is failing. That's what most people are afraid of when going out to perform. So if you have the mindset that you're not afraid to fail, that will help build confidence in performing. And also, knowing that another one of the big reasons why people are sometimes afraid to go out and perform is fear of judgment, or fear of like, oh, they won't like my performance. There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like your performance. Every major artist has haters, people who don't like them. If they don't like what you're performing, that is their problem. That is not on you. That is their own thing. Don't worry about them, and don't be afraid to fail. And those are two of the biggest ways you can build confidence as a performer.